Hi, I'm Sam. Welcome to my channel. I'm an artist and business coach. I help other artists to grow in skills and confidence and also help them to create a business where they make some serious money doing what they love every day. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to create white fur or feathers on white paper. A lot of artists tend to struggle with this. It's a really challenging one. And although you might know the fundamentals, like we know that white is not necessarily white, it's more grey and there are other colours that go into it, I always struggled with getting it to look soft and smooth, and I think I found the answer, so I want to share that with you. One of the most important things is to get a layer down of something like a luminance pencil, because then you're going to be able to use a slice tool if you need to, and you're starting to get rid of the graininess, which is really important. So I apply a thin layer over the whole of the area that I want to possibly slice in the future, and I use a light hand and big circles, and I use about 3 or 4 layers, not just one layer. You go over it a few times and then you know that you've got a lovely thick layer to slice back to if you need to in the future. And they're going with a lighter colour, the warm grey one in this case, and I start to pick out where the shadows are, where the darkest parts are, again using a really light hand. I'm not going in very heavy at all, and I'm applying that in layers and in all of the areas that need it. So going to the top of the eye, over the face, and just seeing where the shadows are, like squinting my eyes. That sometimes really helps, just to work out where the darkest parts are, but going in really lightly. Going in under the eye now. There are lots of different areas that are going to create form on the face, and if you don't have the shadows in, then it's just going to look really flat. So going in at the bottom of the face, there's quite a lot of shadow. I'm using long pencil strokes in the direction of the feathers, which is again important. Using a light hand, and although you feel like it's not really showing up, it definitely is. So I'm now going in with a cold grey one, and I'm starting to create a little bit of a transition between the two areas. So adding a little bit more pencil there, darkening up a little bit, lightening other areas, like blending so that the graininess starts to go, adding this to the lightest parts, and then blending the darker parts as well. So you get a little bit of the pigment on the pencil and you can spread it around nicely, and this is what gives the subtle changes in colour, not just the really kind of going from a contrast to a light. You want the subtle changes in colour, which are going to make all the difference. So I'm overlaying, going over the edges with the cold grey one, and I'm blending again. So it's all about adding layers and blending as much as you can, working over the areas that you've already been in, going into the lighter areas. There's also some darker areas within the light, so don't forget that as well, that you might need to go over the top of the lighter areas, the highlighted areas, just to pull it all together. So just going over the edges and adding a few more layers of this cold grey one, which is a really subtle, cooler tone, which has more blue in it. And then I can start going in with the warm grey 3 and starting to deepen the shadowed areas of the face, which tend to be around the eye. We've got this lovely crease in the eye, but I'm still going in with a really light hand. So how many layers is this now? Possibly 5, 6, 7. Going to the top of the head with the warm grey 3 as well, and going right to the edge into the darkest colour. So again, going over the whole of the face and working out which areas need darkening up just a little bit. I'm not rushing, I'm building up through the colours slowly, and this is a really great way to get rid of the graininess and to start to create a smooth look with a little bit of texture. You don't want to lose it completely, because don't forget these feathers do have lines in. It's exactly the same with fur, no different at all. Going into the area under the eye, where there's more shadow, again, you're starting to see that it's creating a little bit of a rounded look on the face. At the bottom, there was a really interesting frill that was quite white, and if I do a darker colour like this warm grey 3 next to it, it starts to look like it comes towards you. So this is why you're able to create those areas that look like they're 3D, creating form by adding shadow and then having highlights next to it. Going in a little bit more, so just going over the whole of the face and looking to see what needs darkening up a little bit. The bottom was pretty dark, making sure that it's nicely curved, and then I can go in with the white luminance and start to blend into the lightest areas on the face, but overlapping where I've put the darker pencils, so that I'm smoothing the edges and creating a much softer look. Blending is the key here. So I am using this primarily in the lightest parts, but I'm going over the darkest parts with a light hand just to blend it a little bit as well. Even though you feel like you might not be seeing this very well, your light pencil, your white, the luminance is great for this because it's nice and soft. It's going to be lighter than your actual paper. So it is going to notice, and you will notice that you are toning the paper slightly and creating a lovely highlight. Just going in with the darker pencils now, the warm grey 4, and building up the shadow around the beak. Needs to be a little bit darker, but it's not just about the darkest shadows, it's about creating those lovely soft changes in shadow that create a curve, these little nuances in colour. So now I'm going in with an even darker pencil, the warm grey 5, and starting to lightly darken up the most darkest shadows and creating some texture. You can see the lines in the feathers now with the warm grey 5. Don't be afraid to use the darker colours, but remember to use a really light hand and then go in with a lighter colour like this warm grey 1 or cold grey 1 to blend this, to soften the pencil strokes, to move the pigment around just a little bit and make sure that it's not such a harsh line, because if they're harsh, then it does look a little bit crayony and a little bit grainy. So I'm going over the whole of the face with this and blending in between, so the lightest parts and the darkest parts, pulling them together, and then I can go into the lightest parts with the luminance pencil and blend this again, moving that pigment around, softening the pencil strokes and creating a lovely soft look. So you just see how many layers you need and how much blending you need to do. This is probably the bit that I used to leave out. I didn't go in again and blend, I just left it as it was, and I was never really happy with my white fur or feathers, but just going the extra mile, adding a little bit more, does make all the difference. Now this is where the slice tool comes in handy. We can just break up some of the edges. If the pencil strokes look a little bit thick, we can break them up and just add some light feathers, and this works for fur. In the darkest parts, there's always highlights within the dark, and then going in with the cold grey 1 to again blend between those transitions between the shadows and the highlights, just to make sure that it doesn't look stripy. There is a gradual blend of shadow to highlight. It's not just a thick line. You very, very rarely get that in nature. So going all over the face in this way again, just to soften the pencil strokes and making sure that they are smoothing out and blending away. And then again, another layer of the white luminance, just to make sure that it is really softened and that the highlights are as bright as they need to be. Just going in with a darker pencil again. Now we've really added that softness and that transition between the two. We can just see what needs darkening up a little bit more, and you can see how lightly I'm doing this with the warm grey 4. Very subtle above the eye as well. So these are kind of the finishing touches. I tend to try to get some sections that I'm working on done to about 90%, and then I'll start adding in all of the colours around it just to see if it balances. Just adding a little bit to the darkest parts, following the direction of the feathers and the curve of the feathers too, to make sure that we create a lovely rounded look on the face. Very, very light hand, and then blending this with the white luminance again and pushing the pigment around and creating that lovely soft look to soften the pencil strokes and make sure that they're not too harsh and we don't see too many of the lines. Want a little bit of texture, but not too much. Going into the top part as well, any areas that are a lot lighter than others. And coming in under the eye, taking a little step back, blending those lines anywhere there's a little bit of a harsh pencil stroke. And then you can see, if I just zoom in, that overall you get a really lovely gradual white look. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you would like to see this as a real-time tutorial, then I do have it in my online membership, The Joy of Drawing. I'll put the link below. I hope now that you can apply these methods and draw white fur or feathers that you are really proud of, and I really look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.